What's up guys, welcome to this quick review series. Today I'm talking about the video games. You can consider this part 2 of every video game I've played this year so far. So let's get straight into it. Vampyr. So Vampyr is an open world RPG. You play as a doctor in roughly, I think it's World War One period. It's an alternate reality like World War One period London. So it's kind of Victorian era-ish as well, a bit steampunk. And you've just become a vampire. You've got all these skills and abilities now. You can only live in the darkness and nighttime. And the whole story is about you trying to figure out what's happened to you, who's responsible, and finding the person responsible. While also dealing with the various medical issues going around in London at the time. So I think there's like the Spanish flu going on, I think it's called. And as a doctor, you've got to balance your life out between hunting down these vampires who are responsible for turning you into a vampire, while also being a doctor, keeping your cover intact and maintaining the health of the area. Gameplay wise, like I said, it's an RPG. You've got these skills you can level up. The skills add certain elements to combat, so there are abilities like you can drain blood from a distance, so on. You can do like pounce attacks. But the combat for the most part is like hack and slash stuff. You do get ranged weapons like revolvers, which add a bit of variety in there. But it is pretty basic stuff. I would never define it as fun, but it's passable. And honestly, that's the best way to describe this game as a whole. It's a jack of all trades, master of none kind of thing. It very much feels like a game from the last generation, as opposed to a game on this generation. But it feels like a game that came out on PS3 and Xbox 360, but has been up-resed with better looking graphics, for the most part. The animations are limited, but again, not bad. There's nothing about this game that's bad. There's just nothing about it that's like great or outstanding that really like stands out amongst the crowd. This is just a very average, very enjoyable game for the most part. But the characters are interesting. The animations, the facial animations are limited though, so it's hard to relate to them sometimes. There are dialogue trees and choices where you can investigate certain characters and find out more about them, which leads into various side quests and activities that you can do. You've got to try and maintain the health of various areas and districts of London, so you can't just go around killing everyone, otherwise bad things will happen. At the same time, you've got to try and get along with everyone because you don't want people figuring out you're a vampire. As the story is actually the best part of this game. If you're looking for just a good vampire story, this is a good one. It is being adapted into a TV show, and it would make a really good TV show, I think, depending on how they do it. But yeah, the presentation of the game is on a little of the lacking side. It's very passable, but the menus, the icons and everything, it all feels a little clunky, a little... It could have had a little bit more refinement in terms of presentation. But this is just a very passable, very enjoyable game. It's on Game Pass, that's how I played it. If you haven't played it yet, go check it out, you might like it. It's certainly not bad. Monster Hunter World. So, I'm not a Monster Hunter guy, but again, this game was on Game Pass, much like Vampyr, so I gave it a go. And yeah, I'm still not a Monster Hunter World guy. I can see what people like about this, but it's just not for me. The combat was just a little too hack and slash. The whole storyline I wasn't getting behind at all. I don't think there's much of a story there. Maybe I should have played a little bit more of the game, I don't know. But the game's gorgeous. The graphics, the character models, the environments are all good. The actual monsters look good as well. But I don't know, there was just something that wasn't quite connecting with me about this game. The combat, the RPG mechanics were feeling a little wonky for me for some reason. Yeah, it's hard to describe why I didn't like this. It just... When you're going into like cutscenes, half of the dialogue is spoken out in English, the rest you've got to read for yourself. That was really odd. Especially when it seemed like the important stuff was what you had to read yourself. There's a lot of reading in this. And I get it, it's a big game. Maybe it would have raised the budget of the game if they had to get more done in terms of voiceover recording. But they did do some of it, so yeah, a little odd. But yeah, Monster Hunter World, not really my game. I can't quite put my finger on what it was that I didn't like about it. But I think it was just the course of the fact that it is a hack and slash kind of action RPG game. And I don't mind hack and slash action RPG games. The Witcher 3 is kind of that, and that's one of my favourite games of all time. But yeah, the story, the fact that it is Japanese JRPG almost, yeah, it just didn't work for me. It didn't resonate for me. Ryse, Son of Rome. So this is an old game. Again, I played this on Game Pass. I was surprised by this game. I enjoyed this game quite a bit. It is very basic, very linear game. You are a Roman centurion. I believe that's the term. There's a lot of story beats here which have been told before. There are elements in this which are very reminiscent to the film Gladiator and the TV show Spartacus, and of course the old film Spartacus. You are essentially a Roman centurion whose family has been betrayed and murdered. You find that out, and of course you're going through various battles and encounters as a Roman centurion. You then become a gladiator. It's all laid out. This isn't spoilers. Of course, it's a very old game. I can go into spoilers if I want. So the combat is very basic. There's a lot of cool death animations in there. That's probably the highlight of the game. But the combat is fun if basic. You basically do strikes, parries, and blocks. There are different enemies where certain tactics have to be used. So, for example, if there's an enemy with a shield, you have to swing out the shield first before you can attack them. Then there are bigger enemies where you've got to roll out the way to avoid their attacks and so on. So there is some variety in there. The game is gorgeous though. As like I keep saying, this is an older game, but this game, in terms of the visuals, really holds up well. And it's not in 4K, I don't think. It's not in HDR at all. So the fact that it holds up well compared to games now is pretty impressive. Voice acting is fine. The voice acting is good. The story, the problem is the story does feel reminiscent of certain films and TV shows. So it's not all that original. It is very predictable. But yeah, it's just a fun, good game. Again, it's a bit like Vampyr in that it's a jack of all trades, master of none, except this time the graphics and the visuals are probably what it's a master of here. So it's a good game to just play if you've got nothing else to play. It'll pass the time. You'll probably enjoy it. What Remains of Edith Finch? Brilliant. Really good game. So you play as Edith Finch, the latest member of this long family. You are returning to the family home where you were born and where your family has resided for generations. The home, because this is a old home which various family members have added to, it looks really bonkers and bizarre, but it's still kind of believable, even though it looks like something from like Harry Potter. So you've got like the ground level, which is a home, but as you keep getting up there's like a ship built into the side of it and all sorts. It's really weird, really imaginative, really interesting looking, and you're essentially going through this house and the environment surrounding the house a little bit, discovering about things about your relatives and the past family, what happened to them, because there's this whole subplot going on there that maybe this family is cursed, because as you delve into the backstories of each of the family members, it turns out things haven't turned out quite so well for them. I'm not going to go into spoilers, this is something you really have to experience. But you go into each of the family members' bedrooms, they've all got lots of personality, heaps of character in there, things you can just pick out from the environment which really identify this is what this person was, this is what this person was like. The house is kind of spooky, there's an element of horror in there, it's very reminiscent of From Home, which I believe is what they've done before this. So it is, I'm hesitant to call this a walking simulator. There isn't any action in here so much, you are just travelling through the house for the most part. But as you go into the bedrooms and you find each family member's like a leftover document or diary entry, you delve into them in this sort of like flashback formula. And some of them are really interesting, some of them aren't. They play with gameplay mechanics a bit. So there's one, for example, where you're constantly shifting between different animals. You're a cat jumping along trees, and then you're an owl in the sky, then you're a shark in the water. Some of the mechanics work really well. The visuals don't always hold up for some of the stuff. So for a shark, for example, it doesn't look all that good, which is interesting because the actual environments and locations look great. So when it's actually character models in there, that's a bit of a weakness on their part, it seems. But then there are other elements where you are on a swing, swinging backwards and forth. It does a good job with the motion of it all. Then there's one that takes element that's basically like a rip off of Halloween, and it's absolutely brilliant. It's got the music from Halloween and everything, and it's like reading a comic book. Really good and interesting one. That one, probably my favorite. But these are all twisted backstories, and it's a little bit like the Twilight Zone, a little bit like Black Mirror, if you like that sort of thing, where you are delving into them. There is like a dark element to them all, and yeah, all the characters feel well developed and just real living people. And it's just because, spoilers, you don't see anyone in this whole game. You just hear them talk, and yeah, just a brilliant game with a great story. And trying to find out all the secrets about this family is fascinating, and I do recommend this if you can play it. Next up, Outer Wilds. This is another Game of the Year candidate. Brilliant game. So this is a first-person exploration puzzle game for the most part. You play as an alien on a planet. You get into your rickety old spaceship, which is made of like wood and so on. It's really charming, full of character. You then leave your planet, and you've got this whole solar system to explore. And the whole point is to try and find out. There's a bunch of mysteries implanted throughout this. I don't want to spoil this at all because it's really worth going into. But the whole point of it is to uncover what these mysteries are. You keep getting clues which will lead you from one location to the other. There's lots of things like trying to find the correct entrance to a location. Each of the locations is interesting and different. So there's one, I don't want to go into too many spoilers, but there's one planet that was featured in the trailer, which you get to. It's a complete water planet for the most part, but then there's all these big twisters in the sky. It's really threatening and intense when you first go there, and you need to find out what's causing these twisters. There's another planet which has a black hole in the middle of it, which makes traveling around that planet really dangerous at times because, well, you don't want to go in the black hole. There's a time loop in this game, 22 minutes I believe it is. Every 22 minutes you die and you have to start again. But you keep all the information you had, and so that's kind of the central storyline here, is what's causing this time loop, because you remember everything but no one else does. So every 22 minutes you die. You can die in other ways as well. You can die before then. So the ways in which you die are really creative and inventive at times. The sun goes supernova, killing everything. So the first time I died, for example, I thought, you know what? I'm in space. Let's see, put my spacesuit on. I'll climb out the window, and well, not the window, the door, and see what happens. So I do that. The ship's not moving at all. Get my suit on, go out the door. Next thing you know, my ship flies off into the sun, and yeah, I'm left there. Why did it fly off to the sun? I have no idea, but it did. And yeah, I just have to sit there and wait for my oxygen to run out and kill me. Really weird, really funny. Other times, it's the velocity in which I've travelled has just caused me to crash into something and killed myself. But yeah, lots of inventive ways to die. And even though you are dying repeatedly, you will die a lot in this game. You never feel like you're wasting your time. Every time you come back, you feel like you've got a purpose, something else to go to, something else to discover. The game does a good job of setting up the mysteries and giving you clues, which then say pinpoint you from one location to the other. It encourages you to explore, to go all around the place. There are people you can interact with, which will add to your experience. The worlds are really imaginative, really inventive, really full of character and charm. Graphically, the game is gorgeous. It's got a really unique and interesting art style. Definitely one of the games of the year, simply because they're trying to be really vague because I don't want to spoil this, but it's an element that once you get into this game, once you play this game, it'll just click and you'll figure it out. So it took me about like 45 minutes to an hour, about the second time I died really, when I thought, you know what, I know what this game is now and I really dig it. But at first it wasn't really clicking for me. So yeah, go look into the trailer of this game, play this game, it's on Game Pass, give it a go, it's brilliant. And I haven't finished the game yet. I want to get back to this game. I want to see what the end game is because I really want to know what all these answers are to what all these mysteries are. But the reason I haven't finished it is because of my next game, Metro Exodus. So Metro Exodus came out earlier this year. I liked the first two games in the series. Never bought this upon release because I had other things going on. So now it came to Game Pass and I thought, you know what? I've got Game Pass, I'll play it. And I like this game a lot. So Metro Exodus, it's post-apocalyptic. You live on the Moscow Metro, and this game, again, I don't want to spoil the story. The story is the best part of this game. It's really interesting, really fascinating, because it really turns the whole Metro universe on its head, because you find out something which shouldn't be possible, or according to all the information you know so far. So, as you probably know about this game if you've heard of it, you're actually leaving the Metro in this game, and you're on a train traveling across Russia, and it's open world in certain areas. There are a couple of areas which are big open environments. It's a bit like, what's the games? A bit like Hitman or Tomb Raider in that they're open to an extent, but you still get linear missions. There aren't like side missions that you can do, but you can use binoculars to find locations on the map, which can then be points of interest which you can go to, and you can find like upgrades and different weapons and so on. The game is gorgeous. The lighting is brilliant. This is probably one of the best looking games I've seen in a long time. The characters aren't as good looking as the environments though. The animations aren't great. The voice acting isn't great because they're putting on these weird Russian accents. In past games you could have the dialogue spoken in Russian, and I can't see that option in this game. Maybe I haven't looked hard enough, I don't know. But some of the dialogue is not great. There's a lot of dialogue. So, for example, you'll go in to talk to someone quickly, and then they're just droning out paragraph after paragraph of conversation. And what's really weird is your character doesn't speak. It's 2019, and you're playing as a character who doesn't speak. It feels really odd, and it makes this game just really weird. It feels forced at times. Especially when characters are like acknowledging you as if you constantly talk to them, as if you never shut up, really. But it's weird how there's no voice acting in this game for your character, except for when you're loading the game up and you're hearing a diary entry from them. So why is the character speaking in the real game? I don't know. But it also makes the cutscenes and the actual big story moments feel a little odd as well, because there are characters that are constantly talking to you, talking about you, and you're just kind of sitting there, and then they're like, yeah, Artyom, you're being smart by not talking up right now. And it's like, yeah, it's weird. They're constantly acknowledging the fact that you're not talking, and then at other times, it's as if you've missed something because they're acting as if you're always talking, they're acting as if you're their best mate and so on, and yet you don't see any of that. It's odd. But the main mechanics in this game, it is a first-person shooter. There is some driving in there this time. The driving works fine. It's a bit like Far Cry, in fact, this game, quite a bit, in that there are locations you can find on the map. You can go to any location. The mechanics work really well. The lighting is really good. One of the things I noticed though is that it doesn't do a good job of introducing certain mechanics to you. So I started this game off in an underground metro. It was dark, you had to put your flashlight on. And it's still dark. It took me like 3 or 4 hours into the game before it told me you can actually power up your flashlight a little bit to make it brighter. Why didn't it tell me that at the beginning of the game when I actually needed it to be brighter? And then there's a few other instances in this where it introduces something, but then it doesn't go into the actual depth of it until later on, when it could have been useful really earlier in the game. So there are some frustrating little elements here and there like that. But the story's fascinating. I'm having a lot of fun playing this game. It's one of the best games I've played this year, but I don't think it's going to be on the higher end of things. But yeah, Metro Exodus, possibly the best Metro game so far. I haven't finished it yet, I'm still playing it. So maybe I'll change my mind by the time I get to the end. And I feel like I'm getting towards the end. But yeah, having a lot of fun playing this game. It's just, there are certain things that are holding it down for me, like the character not talking, the animations, some of the dialogue's cheesy and too much dialogue in the game as well. But those are the games that I've played this year so far. This is part 2. You can go check out part 1, which I posted earlier in the year. And if you've liked this video, follow me on Twitter and Instagram at @the_Grant_Burton if you want. But the big thing, subscribe to my channel. I'd really appreciate that. It does a lot to show support that way on. You can also give me a thumbs up and leave a comments and feedback down below. What have been your best games this year so far? And until next time, keep on playing.